what are linear equations? It's nothing else other than the fact that when you put it on a graph, which you don't know how to do yet, it makes a straight line on a Cartesian plane. So it looks something like this. Here's our equation, okay? And we're going to say it's a linear equation because when we graphed it, it made this red line here, this perfectly straight line. So we would say this is a linear equation. Take a look at the fact that the word linear actually has the word line in it, and that might actually help you remember that it makes a straight line when you graph it. So don't worry about how to do that yet. That's the future lessons. But linear equation just means that when you put it on a Cartesian plane or a graph like this, it makes a straight line. Um, we also need to take a look at how these linear equations look like. Now here we've got y equals negative 1/2 times x plus 4. That's a very special type of equation called a slope-intercept form. We'll look at that in a second. But we also have this type of equation called a standard form linear equation, and it's 2x minus y equals negative 1. And basically it's where the x and y are on the same side of the equation. But when we graphed it, do you see it still makes a straight line? So to answer the question, what is a linear equation? It's any equation that when you graph it, it makes a straight line. Okay? Now, there are more than two types of linear equations, and in fact, let me cover this up so we can talk about it for just a bit. These are the two very famous versions here. There's a third one that's not quite as widely used called the point slope form, and we're just not going to get to that in this lesson. But what I do want to point out is that there are other types of linear equations. It's kind of like music genres. Everybody knows what rock and roll is. Everybody knows what blues would sound like. Country music, we would know what that sounds like. But then if you started looking at some very small genres of music that you've never even heard of before, that would cause you to go, well, gee, I didn't even know that existed. And that's kind of how it is with these linear equations. We'll know these two right here. It's kind of like country and rock and roll, but then there's going to be another type of music that you've never heard of, or there's going to be another type of equation that you never would have thought would have made a straight line, but it does. So this is what we're looking at overall. What do these look like? Well, for the slope-intercept form, you'll notice that every single one of these slope intercepts has the y all by itself. So let's make a little note right here. The y is all by itself. That's one of the big tip-offs for slope-intercept form. Now, then on the other side, it's got the x term first, followed by another number, plus or minus another number there with no variable. That's slope-intercept. So the y followed by the x term, plus or minus another number. Again, y equals the x term plus or minus another number. So we don't really care what the numbers are, the coefficients, but what we do care about is the y is all by itself, and then usually the x term is immediately after that. But the big thing is, if you can remember this one, that'll let you be able to identify the slope-intercept form most of the time. Now over here we have the standard form, and you'll notice that the x and y terms are on the same side of the equal sign. So let's just put x and y are together. Okay? Now, another thing to note is the x term is always going to come first before the y term with the standard form. And then it's always going to be equal to some number. That's pretty much it for what a linear equation is and two very popular formats there. I've got another lesson that's going to show you how we can convert from a slope-intercept form to standard form, and then also how we can go from standard to slope-intercept form.